Let's have a look at performing allocation and replenishment in Sage ACPAC WMS. We briefly looked at the various processes that WMS can improve upon in the warehouse cycle. So this section is going to be concerned with creating sales orders, performing allocations, as well as replenishment. Before orders can be waived, they first of all have to be created in ACPAC WMS order entry. So the order would be created under WMS OE transactions using the WMS order entry interface. The interface doesn't change from the standard interface. By creating your sales order using this WMS order entry icon, you basically are able to download the order into ACPAC WMS. So again, if we have a look at our orders tab in Web Dispatch, we can currently look at all of the orders that currently exist in WMS. If we look at a column here called All, we can see all of the outstanding orders that exist within the database. There are currently 4 unallocated orders in the database. If I click on that hyperlink, I can see a list of all of those orders. So these are all of the orders that are unallocated. I can see the appropriate information with respect to that order. I can see the order number, the number of lines that exist in the order. I can see fields with the ship via, when the date was date the item was ordered. There's other information that is relevant that appears on this screen here as well. Again, before this order can be picked to the boxes by the warehouse staff, the order first has to be allocated and then it has to be waived. What I mean by allocated is that the goods that exist in the warehouse must be reserved to that order. So for example, you might have 100 widgets existing in your warehouse. You might have 2 different orders where both of those orders order widgets. The first order might have an order of 75 widgets. The second order might have 50 widgets. So the total amount that's being ordered is 125. Now in your traditional warehouse, if a user goes out there to go pick that order, the first order might fulfill the full 75 widgets. However, the second person that's picking the second order is going to go to the bin. They're going to try to pick the remaining widgets, but they will not be able to fulfill that order because of the fact that there is insufficient stock in that bin. Sage ACPAC WMS will help alleviate this problem. Before the order can even be picked by anybody in the warehouse, the existing inventory first must be allocated to that order. Let's have a look at order number 4. When we look at order number 4, we can see that there are 4 different items on this order. There are computer mice, computer keyboards, computer CPUs, and there's even 1 computer on this order. Let's have a look at my computer mouse. If I click on my computer mouse, I can see information regarding this item. The item number is 01000001 and the description is computer mouse. I can see that 150 computer mice are at bin A1A1. 101 computer mouse are at bin C1C1. Bin C1C1 is an overstock bin. It's not possible for you to pick items from this bin. They can only be picked from pickable bins. There's a total of 251 computer mice in my warehouse. On the current existing sales orders, I have 147 of these computer mice that should get allocated to a sales order. So for all outstanding sales orders that exist in ACPAC WMS, I should have sufficient stock to ship. Let's have a look at my computer. If I look at item 01000009, I can see that there are 2 on sales order. However, I only have 1 on hand. By default, Sage ACPAC WMS is not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to place this order into what is called ready to waive status because you don't have sufficient inventory to fulfill that order. Let's have a look at order number 3. On order number 3, I can see that I'm going to ship 77 computer mice to this customer. If I drill down onto my computer mouse, I again can see that I have a total of 251 computer mice on hand, and 150 of these units exist in bin A1A1. So I shouldn't have any problems shipping computer mice out to this customer. I'm going to allocate or reserve the stock that exists on orders 3 and orders 4. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select orders 3 and orders 4. To allocate the items that exist on this order, what I need to do is I need to right click and then select allocate. What ACPAC WMS is going to do is that it's going to attempt to allocate the items that exist on orders 3 and orders 4. The following screen appears, and I can specify the appropriate options as how they are going to affect the allocation. I'm going to accept the default options here, and I'm going to click on Submit. If I go back to my orders page, I have one order that is in ready to waive status. All of the items that exist on this order are ready to waive. If I click on number 1, I can see that order number 3, all of the items that exist on this order here are ready to waive. For my computer mouse here, I can see that the status here is green. It says 77 times 1 at bin A1A1. So what this means is that at bin A1A1, 77 computer mice has been allocated to this order. If we drill down into that product, and then drill down onto the bin A1A1, I can see that order number 3, we have 77 computer mice allocated to that order. I can also see that we have 10 allocated to that order here. That actually shows up on the status tabs. So you see 77 times 1, A1A1, 77 computer mice in bin A1A1 have been reserved to fulfill that order. 10 of them in bin A1A1 have been reserved for order number 4. It will not be possible for you to allocate or pick these items against other orders because they have already been reserved to that order. Note that it is possible for you to unallocate items that have been allocated to a specific order. Let's go back to our order screen. We'll also note that one of these orders here is now in status called held short. If I click on held short, I can see that order number 4 is in held short status. If I drill down into this order, I can see what caused the item to go on short status. Basically, an item is held short if you have items that are on your sales order, but you don't have sufficient quantity to fulfill that order. So in this case, I did order 2 computers. If I look at my computer on my sales order, it does state that there is 1 short. There's currently 1 computer that exists in the warehouse. However, there are 2 computers that are on sales order. So one of these computers is short. The other computer, however, is reserved for this sales order. So now, let's say you have another customer who puts in an order for a computer. You will not be able to ship them that computer because that computer that is currently in the warehouse has been reserved for that order. So if that customer needs that computer, what you would have to do is you would have to unallocate this specific order. Let's now have a look at order number 2. I'm going to have a look at my unallocated orders. And let's have a peek at order number 2. On order number 2, we can see that a total of 76 computer mice has been ordered. If I drill down onto my computer mouse, I can see that 150 computer mice exist in the pickable bin location A1A1. In bin C1C1, I can see that 101 computer mice exist in non-pickable bin location C1C1. Bin C1C1 is a storage bin, so it's not possible for us to pick items from that bin. Bins that exist in storage locations, otherwise called as carton locations, they first have to be moved out of that bin and put into a pickable bin. For example, if you have goods that are stacked up maybe 20 feet high on an overhead shelf, you can't pick items from that bin by default. They normally have to be moved from the overstock bin over to a pickable bin. So there are 76 computer mice on that sales order. There are currently 150 mice that exist in bin A1A1. However, some have already been allocated to other sales orders. If we look at the amount that is currently unallocated, and what I mean by unallocated is that there are stock reserved or not reserved in that bin, so it's possible for me to pick up to 63 units in that bin. It's possible for me to reserve up to 63 computer mice. However, there are 76 items that are being ordered. If I go back to that order, this is order number 2. If I try to allocate this order, I'm going to use the default options. So I'm going to click on Submit. I'm going to refresh my order screen, and I can see that the order that I just tried to allocate is now in a status called Held for Replenishment. An order is in Held for Replenishment status if you have sufficient stock in your warehouse to fulfill all of the detailed line items in the order, but those items don't necessarily exist in pickable locations. And we know that that's the case for order number 2. If we click on Held for Replenishment, order number 2 is in Held for Replenishment. I'm going to click on order number 2. And I'm going to scroll down to my detailed line items, and I can see the item that is causing us to go into Held for Replenishment here. Again, in the green, it says that there are 63 items reserved for us at pickable bin A1A1. However, what you see in blue here, 13 times 1, that means that there are 13 items that exist in a non-pickable location C1C1. What we need to do is we have to move items out of bin C1C1 and move them to a pickable location. Now what happens behind the scenes in this case is that the appropriate replenishment ticket is automatically created. So the warehouse staff know that they have to go to the appropriate place in the warehouse. They have to pick those computer mice out of the non-pickable bin location and move them over to the pickable bin location. So again, this is my, we are pretending that the interface that you see in front of me is the actual radio frequency handheld. What I need to do is I have to go to Overstock, and I am going to do a 2-step process to move the items from the non-pickable bin to the pickable bin location. So normally, as the warehouse staff user, I'm going to have a copy of the replenishment ticket in my hand. I'm going to go down to let down stock, and I can specify in this case by product. I know that I'm going to be letting down computer mice, and I have to move computer mice out of bin C1C1, so that's what it's asking me here. It's telling me that there are 101 computer mice in bin C1C1. To be able to fulfill all current orders that are currently in Held for Replenishment status, I have to take at least 13 out. So in this case, what I can do is I can take 50 computer mice out of my non-pickable location. I can take 50 computer mice out of my carton location. So at this point in time, I have 50 computer mice that are sitting on my cart. The second thing that I would need to do is I would have to do a process called fill bins. This fill bins process, what it does is that it records items as you take them off of your cart and you put them into the appropriate pick bin location. So again, I have 50 computer mice that are sitting in my cart, and it's telling them to move 50 items, 50 computer mice out of my cart, and it's telling me to go to bin A1 and put the computer mice in those bins. So now the computer mice now exist at bin A1. If I click on my computer mouse here again, I can see at bin A1 that there are 50 more units here. So what I would need to do is I would have to reallocate this order before it can get picked. When I reallocate this order, it should go out of held for replenishment state. You still see a row here called held for replenishment, and that's probably because of the fact that the status hasn't updated yet. It usually takes about a couple of seconds to do. Let's actually have a look at the ready to wave. And actually I should see my new order existing under ready to wave. So if I look at order number 2, and here it is, I can see that order number 2 is now in ready to wave status. That was the order that was previously in held for replenishment status earlier. Again, once the order is in ready to wave status, we can't at this point release it to the warehouse staff for picking, but it is in a state where we can verify that we want to release it to the warehouse staff to be picked. So we've just looked at an example of how to allocate an order. We also looked at replenishment. The type of replenishment that we looked at was actually called hot replenishment. Basically what happens in hot replenishment is that replenishment requests are created as soon as there is a need to move items from the non-pickable bins to the pickable bins. So as soon as an order has gotten allocated, if all of the items that exist on those sales orders were not readily pickable but they exist in the warehouse, the replenishment tickets are automatically created. There are other ways that you can do replenishments as well. You can use advanced replenishment. When you use advanced replenishment, what is going to happen is that the idea is that at the beginning of the day, all of the appropriate replenishment requests are going to get filled. For example, you can specify the minimum and maximum number of quantities that should be at any bin. When you run the advanced replenishment function, Sage ACPAC WMS is going to automatically redirect the pickers, or not the pickers, but the folks who are responsible for doing the replenishments to move items that exist in the carton locations and bring the appropriate stock, the optimal level of stock, over to the bins that should contain the items in the pickable locations. Obviously, if you want to ensure warehouse accuracy and you want to be able to make sure that things run smoothly, you want to make sure that you always have sufficient stock in your pickable bins.